Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're tackling a really core question for basically any organization out there, big or small.
That's right.
Should we make something ourselves, keep it internal, or should we, contract it out? It's the classic make-buy decision.
Absolutely fundamental.
And understanding this is just, well, it's everything for supply management strategy.
Yeah.
Especially when you start talking about the big modern trends like outsourcing and offshoring.
It really is. And it sounds simple, doesn't it? Make or buy, just, compare the prices and pick the cheaper one.
If only.
Exactly.
Not
If it were that easy, companies wouldn't pour millions into figuring this out, getting it wrong, trying again. So our mission today really is to give you the strategic toolkit.
Okay.
We're going to dive into the three major theoretical ways companies look at this. The lenses they use to decide what work is truly core, what's too risky to let go of, and what makes sense to buy from someone else.
Right. Let's maybe start with a hook, something to show just how big this decision is.
Yeah.
Imagine you're setting up a completely new car company right now.
Okay. Yeah.
Think about everything that goes into a car. The engine, the software running it, those fancy alloy wheels, even the seats. How much of that are you actually going to make inside your own factory? And how much are you going to buy from suppliers who maybe specialize in just that one thing?
It's a huge question, and the answer can look completely different depending on your strategy. Think way back, like Henry Ford around 1930.
Oh yeah, the classic example.
His whole approach was extreme vertical integration. Ford owned practically everything, the mines for the iron ore, rubber plantations.
Gas factories, the whole nine yards.
Exactly. He made almost everything. Now compare that to, say, a modern car manufacturer. They rely heavily on this complex web of suppliers, right? Tier 1, Tier 2.
Ooh, totally different world.
So that make-buy scope, it fundamentally shapes the entire business.
Okay, so if we're starting to analyze this strategically, where's the first stop?
Well, you start where economists always start, with the money.
Right, cost.
Our first lens is the simplest one, the most traditional. It's the Neoclassical view. Basically, Microeconomics 101 applied to the firm.
And the core idea there is?
It's all about efficiency, minimizing cost. The principle is really straightforward. A company shouldn't do anything in-house if some external supplier can provide that same thing, component, service, whatever, for less money.
Simple as that. Why spend your own resources if someone else is already specialized and cheaper?
That's the logic. This view really drove, the whole idea of specialization leading to mass efficiency. It created entire industries built just on doing one thing really well for other companies.
Okay, so under this purely cost-focused lens, what kind of things typically get outsourced? Where do companies see those big savings?
Well, you see a few major categories pop up again and again. First, there's manufacturing outsourcing, sometimes called contract manufacturing.
Like designing a phone here, but having it built somewhere else.
Exactly. Your design, their factory, lower cost. Then there's design outsourcing. Maybe you need a really specific bit of engineering.
Like for a chip or something.
Yeah, or a complex part. It might be cheaper to just buy that specialized design expertise from an engineering firm than try to keep those skills in-house, especially if you don't need them all the time.
Got it. And the third one. This one feels like it touches almost everyone.
Business process outsourcing? BPO. This isn't physical stuff, it's services.
Like HR, payroll.
Right. Running call centers, managing the purchasing of, say, office supplies, indirect procurement.
Right.
And a huge one here is logistics and warehousing. We often call that third-party logistics, or 3PL.
Ah, using companies like FedEx or DHL for your warehousing.
Precisely. If they specialize in it, have massive scale, and can do your warehousing and transport for, say, 15% less than your own internal division. The Neoclassical view says outsource it. Buy the service.
But, and this is a big but, isn't it? If it was only about the price tag, we could probably end this deep dive right now.
Yeah, we could.
But everyone knows stories, right? You outsource the call center to save money, and suddenly your customer service tanks. Or the quality drops on the manufactured part. Or you spend more time managing the supplier contract than you save.
That's the crux of it. That realization that markets aren't perfect, that there are hidden risks, that managing these external relationships has its own costs, that's the big limitation of just looking at the price.
And that's what pushes us to the next level.
Exactly. It forces us to move to our second and frankly much richer theoretical lens, transaction cost economics, usually just called TCE.
TCE. Okay, so this shifts things. It's not just the price of the product, but the cost of the process of buying it.
Precisely, the cost of the transaction itself. And the thinking here actually goes way back, almost 100 years, really, to 1937, a paper by Ronald Coase.
The nature of the firm. Landmark stuff.
It really was. Coase asked this fundamental question. If markets are so efficient, why do big companies even exist? Why isn't everything just done through market contracts between individuals?
Good question.
And then Oliver Williamson, starting around the 1970s, really developed Coase's idea into the strategic framework we use today.
So what was Williamson's central insight? How did he build on Coase?
Well, Williamson basically said, look, the transaction is the thing you need to analyze, the basic unit. And understanding how to economize on the cost of those transactions, that's the key to understanding why firms are structured the way they are.
Economize on transaction costs.
Yeah. Think about it. Sometimes the cost of actually using the market, finding suppliers, negotiating contracts, monitoring quality, enforcing the deal if something goes wrong, sometimes those costs are actually higher than just doing the work inside the company.
Ah, okay. So the firm exists because it can sometimes coordinate work internally cheaper than coordinating it through external market contracts.
That's the core idea. TCE explains the boundaries of the firm, why some things are inside and some are outside. It's not just the purchase price, it's all those often hidden administrative negotiation monitoring costs.
Okay, so TCE points to these hidden costs.
Yeah.
How does it help us identify where they're likely to pop up? Williamson identified some key factors, right?
He did. There are 4 key characteristics that sort of interact to create these transaction costs. We usually group them into 2 about the transaction itself and 2 about, well, human behavior.
All right, let's break those down. Transactional ones first.
First one is asset specificity. This sounds a bit academic, but it's crucial. It's about how much an investment could be a tool, a machine, specialized training, specific knowledge is tied to one particular relationship. How easily could you reuse that investment if the relationship ended?
Okay, give us an example. Make it concrete.
Sure. Let's say you design a unique plastic casing for your product. You pay a supplier to create a custom mold just for your casing. That mold is a highly specific asset. It can only make your part.
Right. No one else wants it.
Exactly. Now, what happens if you want to switch suppliers? The mold might be useless, or the current supplier knows you're locked in because getting a new mold made takes time and money. They could potentially exploit that.
They could raise prices or let quality slip because they know it's hard for you to leave.
Precisely. So if an asset is highly specific to the relationship, TCE suggests that the risk of being held up is high. That pushes the decision towards doing it internally, even if the supplier's initial quote looks cheaper. You avoid that lock-in risk.
Okay, high specificity points towards make. What's the second transactional one?
Uncertainty. This is about reducing risk around future conditions you can't fully predict or contract for.
Like market swings, new regulations.
Exactly. Or sudden technological changes. Imagine you're in a really fast-moving tech area, like maybe developing new battery chemistry. It's super uncertain.
Yeah, things change month to month.
Right. In that case, even if outsourcing the R&D looks cheaper on paper, the uncertainty is so high, maybe your supplier goes bust. Or the tech pivots unexpectedly that you might keep it internal. High uncertainty also pushes towards make because it gives you more control and flexibility to adapt.
Okay, so asset specificity and uncertainty relate to the deal itself. Now, what about the behavioral assumptions? These sound interesting.
They are, and they're a bit, well, less optimistic about human nature, perhaps. The first is bounded rationality.
Bounded rationality.
Meaning, it means managers aren't superheroes. They're not perfectly rational, all-knowing computers who can calculate every possible outcome and always optimize for profit.
They're human.
They're human. They have limited information, limited time, limited cognitive ability to process everything. So they don't truly optimize. Instead, Herbert Simon called it satisficing. They make decisions that are just good enough to meet the immediate goals or pressures they're facing.
So going back to that outsourcing example, a manager under pressure for this quarter's profits might see the immediate cost saving from outsourcing.
And satisfice on that goal.
Even if, rationally, considering the long term, it might damage the company's core skills or create huge switching costs down the line. Their rationality is bounded by the short-term pressure.
You've got it. They focus on the immediate, tangible saving, not the complex, uncertain long-term impact. Bounded rationality leads to decisions that might look good now but cause problems later.
Okay. And the final behavioral assumption, that this one sounds potentially problematic.
It is. It's opportunism.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. TCE assumes that, given the chance, individuals and firms will act in their own self-interest, sometimes with guile. They might exploit loopholes in contracts, shirk on quality if it's not easily monitored, or try to renegotiate terms unfairly once they know the other party is dependent on them, like with that specific asset example.
So it's not necessarily outright cheating, but
Yeah,
pushing the boundaries for self-gain.
exactly. It's about self-interest seeking with guile. Because bounded rationality, contracts are always incomplete. You can't possibly foresee every eventuality. Opportunism means someone might exploit those gaps.
So TC suggests you structure your make-or-buy decision and the resulting contracts, specifically to minimize the opportunities for this kind of behavior. Or, if the risk is too high, you just bring the activity in-house to control it directly.
That's the essence of it. Control the risk of opportunism.
Wow. Okay, so Neoclassical is about cost. TCE adds this whole layer of risk transaction costs, driven by specificity, uncertainty, bounded rationality, and opportunism. What's a third perspective? It feels like we need something else.
We do, because even TCE, focused on risk, is still looking primarily outside the firm, at the transaction. The third lens flips that. It looks inside. It's the resource-based view, or RBV.
Resource-based view. Okay, so shifting focus from cost and risk to internal strengths.
Exactly, to capabilities. The RBV argues that a company's long-term competitive advantage doesn't come from just making cheap deals in the market. It comes from owning and developing unique resources and capabilities that are valuable, rare, hard for competitors to imitate, and hard to substitute.
Things your company does exceptionally well that others can't easily copy.
That's it. So RBV approaches the make-buy decision with a completely different set of questions. It's not primarily, is it cheaper or less risky to buy?
It's more like, is this activity fundamental to what makes us unique and competitive?
Precisely. If you're, say, a high-performance bicycle company, maybe your secret sauce is your unique way of layering carbon fiber. That's a core competence.
Right.
RBV would say outsourcing the knowledge and practice of how to do that layering, even if technically cheaper, would be strategic suicide. You'd be giving away the crown jewels.
So RBV provides a kind of capability-driven decision pathway.
Yes, a very clear one. It's a sequence of questions about capability.
Okay, walk us through that logic. How does RVV guide the make-or-buy choice?
All right. First question. Do we currently have the capabilities needed to perform this activity? And are they, genuinely better than competitors?
If the answer is yes.
Then the decision is make. You leverage that existing strength. It's part of your competitive advantage.
Okay, what if the answer is no, we don't have world-class capability right now?
Then the next question is, okay, but can we develop the necessary capabilities internally? Is it feasible and strategically important enough to build the skill?
And if that answer is yes,
you still make. Because you're investing in building a future competitive advantage. It's a strategic capability build.
You're playing the long game. So only if you don't have it and you can't realistically develop it internally.
Yeah.
Then what?
Then you ask, can we acquire the necessary capabilities? Notice the word acquire. If the answer here is yes, the decision is technically buy, but RBV often points towards buying the capability itself, not just the output.
How do you mean? Like buying the whole company that has the skill?
Often, yes. Through mergers and acquisitions, M&A. You're not just contracting with a supplier, you're buying their entire team, their know-how, their processes. You're internalizing the resource.
Okay, that's a very different kind of buy decision than just outsourcing. And if the answer to all those is no, you don't have it, can't build it, can't acquire it.
Then, and only then, does RBV say, okay, just buy it from a standard supplier. Because clearly this activity isn't core to your strategy, it's not a source of advantage, and it's not worth the major investment to build or acquire the capability. It's truly non-core.
So RBV really forces you to think about what activities define your company's long-term success and protect those fiercely. Losing a core competence is an existential threat, basically, regardless of short-term cost arguments.
That's the power of the RBV perspective. It's fundamentally strategic.
Okay, fantastic. We've laid out the three big theoretical frameworks: Neoclassical focusing on cost, TCE on transaction risk, and RBV on core capabilities. Now let's bring this down to earth. How do these theories help us understand the big real-world practices we see all the time? Outsourcing and offshoring.
Yeah.
This is where it gets messy, right?
Absolutely. This is where the theory hits the road. And it's critical to connect them. Just quickly, let's define terms. Outsourcing is contracting a process to a third party. Offshoring is moving a process to another country that could be done internally in your own foreign facility or outsourced to a third party offshore.
Got it.
The big wave of outsourcing and offshoring, starting maybe late 90s, really exploding in the 2000s, that was driven almost entirely by that first lens we talked about.
The neoclassical cost view. find cheaper labor, cheaper facilities anywhere in the world.
Exactly. There's this huge push, almost a pressure, to outsource anything that wasn't narrowly defined as core, often just to hit those quarterly profit targets we mentioned under bounded rationality.
Right. And what happened? What have we seen over the last, say, 20 years?
Well, the results were, let's say, mixed. In many cases, they were pretty disastrous in the longer run. We saw huge disruptions in supply chains, quality nightmares, loss of innovation.
And now we hear a lot about reshoring or nearshoring, companies bringing operations back closer to home.
Precisely. Why did that happen? Why did companies reverse course, often at great expense? It's because the initial decisions, based only on that narrow neoclassical cost view, ignored the other two lenses. The short-term cost savings were eventually swamped by the long-term TCE risks and the RBV capability losses.
Can you give an example? How would TCE and RBV explain why offshoring based purely on cost often failed?
Sure. Take sending specialized manufacturing to a country far away just because labor is cheaper. Neoclassical view says, great, do it.
Yep.
But TCE immediately flags risks. You've increased uncertainty, different legal system, cultural nuances, political instability, perhaps. You've potentially increased the risk of opportunism if contracts are harder to enforce there. And you might have created huge asset specificity issues. Your specialized tools or knowledge are now physically distant, maybe locked in with a supplier who knows you can't easily switch.
So the total cost, including managing all that new risk and complexity, the transaction costs, suddenly balloons and eats up those initial labor savings.
Often, yes. And from the RBV perspective, the damage can be even deeper, more insidious.
How so?
Think about manufacturing. A lot of incremental innovation, those small process improvements, happens right there on the factory floor. Engineers tinkering, production staff finding slightly better ways to do things.
Then hands-on learning.
Exactly. When you offshore production, especially to a third party thousands of miles away, you often break that link between design and manufacturing. You lose that capability for shop floor innovation. You accidentally outsource your process capability.
So you didn't just outsource the making of the part, you outsource the learning associated with making it.
That's it. And years later, the company realizes they haven't just lost production, they've lost the knowledge. They no longer have the capability, as RBV would ask, they actively divested it. And that's why you see companies now paying a premium to reshore, trying to rebuild that knowledge base they let wither away.
Wow. So it really underscores why any big outsourcing or offshoring decision needs to be filtered through all three lenses: cost, yes, but also transaction risk and long-term capability. You ignore TCE and RBV at your peril.
That's absolutely the key takeaway. You can't afford to rely on just one perspective, especially in today's complex global environment.
Okay, let's quickly recap then. We've looked at the make or buy decision, which extends into outsourcing and offshoring, through three really distinct viewpoints.
Yep. First, the traditional neoclassical view, all about minimizing the direct costs.
Then transaction cost economics, or TCE, bringing in the crucial factors of risk, hidden costs, market imperfections, and tricky human behaviors like bounded rationality and opportunism.
And finally, the resource-based view, RBV, which anchors the whole decision and strategy, what capabilities are truly core to your long-term competitive advantage.
And we've seen how the practical reality of outsourcing and offshoring over the last couple of decades really highlights the dangers of ignoring TCE and RBV, leading to trends like reshoring.
Definitely. The failures often trace right back to neglecting those transaction costs or giving away core capabilities.
Okay, so to wrap up, here's a final thought for you, the listener, to chew on, something that pulls these threads together. Thinking specifically about TCE's behavioral assumptions.
Bounded rationality and opportunism.
Right. If a company decides to outsource something really critical and complex, like, say, its cybersecurity infrastructure, purely based on a lower contract price.
Risky area.
What are some of those overlooked, maybe non-financial transaction costs stemming from bounded rationality or potential opportunism that could completely undermine the whole point of security in the first place?
Yeah, think beyond the invoice. What's the true cost of managing unpredictable behavior or knowledge gaps or misaligned incentives in something as sensitive as security?
Something to consider. We really encourage you to think about which framework, cost, risk, or capability tends to dominate your own thinking or your organization's thinking when these kinds of strategic choices come up.
Absolutely. Until next time, keep digging into the sources.